Let's go!
I have always thought a Smash TV is a bit of a Running Man ripoff when it comes to the storyline. In fact, the storyline's theme for this game was actually borrowed from both RoboCop and The Running Man, which both happen to be two of the 80s most violent films and also two of my personal favourites. The plot of the game is fairly simple. Of course, it is set in a dystopian future of 1999, which when this game released for arcades back in 1990, the year 1999 seemed fairly far off. A celebrity known as the Master of Ceremonies, or just MC for short, hosts the game Smash TV, which is the year 1999's most popular form of entertainment on TV. We play as contestants on Smash TV who need to take down waves of enemies by any means necessary in order to make it to subsequent rooms in order to progress to take on challenging bosses whilst picking up prizes along the way. And that is it. MC gives us a chance to get prizes like VCRs and wads of cash. All we need to do is just survive. So very similar to The Running Man in terms of fighting for freedom. A simple game to navigate. We take down waves of enemies and move to the next room. If we collect certain items, we can even enter what is known as a pleasure dome. We also sometimes get to choose which way to go. MC will make an appearance throughout the game with voice synth quoting things from RoboCops. Each room can be fairly easy to an absolute nightmare in difficulty levels, with literally hordes of enemies to shoot down who will crowd around you. We have many different weapons in the game to pick up, from an instant blow up everything on screen to grenade launchers. The game is considered as a dual twin shooter and was of course a big inspiration for the awesome 2019 Xeno Crisis game. So today we are ranking from worst to best, which I consider as the very best home conversion of the Williams Electronic 1990 release of Smash TV. Ocean released the Amstrad CPC conversion in 1991 and was developed by Acclaim. Of course, Ocean as well as Acclaim games could be hit or miss, but what we have here for the Amstrad is a fairly good attempt at Smash TV. Yes, it is extremely cut down, we get no introduction screen and see no studio cameras or lighting from ceilings. We get no frequent pop-ups from MC with women behind him holding cash. We get new enemies to fight here too, including some cut down sprites from the original arcade game. Walking between rooms is just another black screen rather than seeing small pathways to each new room like the arcade game had. It goes without saying there is nowhere near as many enemies on screen all at once like we are used to seeing originally, but for what it is, the CPC version is really good and fairly addictive too. What I admire about this conversion is the pure speed of it and its consistent frame rate rather than dropping when too much is happening. The controls aren't like the arcade twin shooter experience and just require us walking around and aiming the weapon in the correct direction we want to shoot in. I was really surprised with how good this Amstrad game was. Again, I was very surprised of how well the ZX Spectrum conversion of Smash TV works for the 128K models. Sprites in different enemies, like the CPC version, were almost the same here. What I thought was a bit of an upgrade with this version was that we had at least an opening scene to the game with the studio part, which made it seem just a little more like the game it is attempting to emulate. Again, this is one speedy conversion and definitely a tough one too. It has plenty of colours, sure it looks rudimentary but it plays fairly well. Weapons with this version seem a little more satisfying to use, such as a triple shotgun. The game even opens up with a controlling screen, which is presented in a Smash TV style. Text above the gameplay screen, which tells us the scores and lives, are also done with a scanline looking effect to give us the vibe of a TV screen we're looking at. The gameplay areas are also a little better in terms of design too. This is a cracking ZX Spectrum game that released in 1991 by Ocean. The Sega Game Gear received a conversion in 1994 by Flying Edge. It is pretty much the same game as the next version in this list, but only choppier to play. So we do have music within the game itself for this 1992 Flying Edge release of Smash TV for the Sega Master System, and the game looks very good, complete with fairly impressive opening presentation of the studio, but I just really felt that this game was majorly let down by its bizarre control scheme, and it was very ugly to look at and had very janky sprites. We have an option menu with the Sega Master System version to change the controller layout. I tried different options but was pretty much all the same. For a Sega Master System game, this was quite a letdown if I'm honest. Sprites, or as some will call them, is tiles, move janky. I often felt that sometimes when shooting at enemies, the buttons wasn't responding. So I looked back at early reviews of the game and it was even known for the time. For a very basic 8-bit console game, this could have been very good, but it wasn't for a couple of controller issues. We didn't even get segments between rooms where we see contenders walking through the corridors. Like I said, with the Sega Game Gear release, both are pretty much the same, only this Master System version appeared to be a little more responsive. Now, this is how to do an 8-bit computer conversion. Smash TV on the Commodore 64 is way up there. It's been one of the best ports on this platform. Of course, it's very noticeable that we just have black on the floor areas, but really, that's likely my only complaint with this version. The pace of this version is just ample, and controlling the contestants feels a little more like there is some weight rather than flying around everywhere like the Amstrad and Spectrum's versions. We even get a map pop-up too here to give us an overall arcade feel. The enemy sprites are largely looking like the arcade game too, without the need of adding extra ones. Each arena we enter gives us a nice flashy display. Using weapons feels really good here, especially using the protective barrier where bouncing the enemies with it kills them, and it looks good. The wads of cash in wrapped up prizes also look so similar to the arcade game itself. I took on Mutoid Man, the first boss, and I was really surprised about how faithful this was. Sure, there are no voice samples from what I've heard, but everything just looks so good here. To the point that when Mutoid Man makes the room shakes and it looks like it used sports to do this. To make it even more faithful, the score system is even on the gameplay area too. This seriously is a great game and a highly addictive one too for the Commodore 64. I was blown away by how good this acclaimed 1992 NES release actually was. Historically, Nintendo didn't like to associate itself with violence in games, although they did produce games such as RoboCop where these were generally watered down. So we have Smash TV for the epic 8-bit console. This is a great conversion. It opens up promising, complete with voice samples which sound almost identical to the arcade game, with MC popping up before stages begin. The quality of those pop-ups where MC and the women behind him are really nicely detailed and full of colour. The sprites in this version are scaled down in size compared with others, but it does the job, and you can certainly see that we are playing Smash TV. We have the scoreboard on the gameplay area. We even have maps that appear after rooms are complete. Barely any sprite flicker, which is quite impressive for a NES game with so much happening on the screen all in one go. And it also operates at a fair pace of speed too. The controls are tight here, although they are basic with pointing the weapon in the same direction to shoot. It works perfectly, and the Master System counterpart of this was truly shocking in comparison with its controls. The music sadly doesn't last throughout the game. It fades out and brings in sound effects, but the music truly is superb here. And we even get the corridor scenes in between stages. Yes, I was very happy playing this one. Very cool stuff.
Good luck. You all need it.
Next up, we got the Atari ST version. So firstly, there's no music in the game itself, slightly slower than the next release in this video. Sound effects with the Atari ST release is okay, but nothing really spectacular, although the introduction music is admittedly pretty good here. We do get a walk into the studio scene here, and other faithful visuals such as maps popping up, but walk into subsequent rooms through corridors don't give us this. It's just a black screen followed with the logo of Smash TV. There is no voice samples in this version. It's very similar to the next version, which just runs that much better and sounds better. Now, the Amiga conversion tends to be debated. Some will find it bad, some will find it really good. Personally, I thought this 1991 Ocean release tended to be fairly good. Of course, it could have been much better, but still, we are ranking what I consider to be the best. So firstly, there is no in-game music at all, and there is no cutscenes in between stages, or even studio introduction, but something it does have going for it is that sprites are looking almost like the arcade game itself. The screen can also get horrendously overwhelmed very quickly with enemy waves coming from all directions. Despite a couple of cutbacks, I just felt this version was a step in the right direction for the gameplay alone. There is very little frame rate issues here with this Amiga release, although a very tough version of Smash TV. The arcade's game itself was no walk in the park, was it? Wads of cash and wrapped up prizes look really nice here too. Just like most versions in this list, it also offers a simultaneous 2-player game. Generally, the gameplay layout is the same as the arcade game itself, with the scoreboards on the gameplay areas. It's just a real shame that a little more effort didn't go into this, such as adding a studio introduction and cutscenes in between stages. One thing that really stood out is being blown up, a nice animation of an eyeball flying into the air. Very awesome stuff.
Total carnage! I love it!
The Sega Mega Drive's turn for Smash TV came in 1992 and released by Flying Edge. This was an outstanding conversion and a big upgrade from the 16-bit computers that had it ported. Everything is pretty much here, including a great opening to the game, and as we move between rooms to fight hordes of enemy waves, the studio cameras and scaffolding follows us like it is in the arcade, using parallax scroll effect to make it look 3D, and it's done really well here too. Controls for the Sega Mega Drive version are some of the best I have played for this game, and we can even change controller mappings inside of the options menu. Of course, having more action buttons for a game like Smash TV was always going to be beneficial. The opening to the game looks very authentic, with MC waving his arms about, using voice samples, saying "Total Carnage." It's a fairly colourful game too. The depth of the gameplay areas look well, with some nice shadowing added to give it that top-down treatment. It's certainly one of the most tougher releases, but it just plays so well. Hit collision detection is great, the waves of enemies are fairly similar to the arcade game, and they are consistent too. Once a wave is gone, another wave will arrive very soon after. Mutoid Man is also designed well too. As we start destroying it, his body starts flying apart. Very bizarre, just like the arcade game had. This is a great game which also comes with very faithful music throughout with great sound effects added. And finally, in first place, I have decided to go for Super Smash TV. This is truly the next best version you would have had outside of the 1990 arcade game itself. Now, this 1992 acclaimed release did everything the Mega Drive version had, but made it 100 times much better. We get a ridiculous amount of voice samples here, both music and sound effects exist during gameplay, but the music is just an afterthought when we are shooting and blowing things up, much like the arcade game that is. The sound effects are truly amazing with this SNES conversion. We have literally got it all here, including having animations for being electrocuted, a really nice animation for when we are hit over. What makes this even better is that you can hear the audience cheer when you are hit over too. The music itself, in my opinion, is an absolute improvement for the original arcade game itself. It sounds incredible. Shading to represent a top-down view is here, and also the studio beams with cameras and lighting can also be seen as we travel to the first round. The pace and speed of this game is also very comparable with the arcade original. Really, if you had this back in 1992, you was likely having a great time with this game. Where many control layouts in each version was fairly poor to just okay or average, the SNES control pad, of course, had 4 action buttons. This game utilises each one as a directional shooting button, and it works so damn good too here. And that's it for ranking all the various different versions of Smash TV. If I've missed out a conversion, I truly apologise, but I hope to think I've got all the main ones here. Which version of Smash TV did you own back in the day? Do you remember playing Smash TV in the arcade like I do? Anyways, drop us a comment as always and let's hear your feedback. Do you agree that the SNES version was better than the Mega Drive version? Anyways, until next time, thanks for watching.
Good luck. You'll need it.